this is about the strands of the first highlight you should aim to achieve.
Roughly, yeah. Well, it's more to do with the contrast. You do get contrast between that and that. Yeah. So now I've already mixed up here, like these cooking lessons, I made enough of the first highlight mix to add some white in for the second highlight. It's a good idea if it dries like that to take it out, otherwise the dry will mix in with the fresh. Okay, so now we're beginning to distinguish. See, I haven't really distinguished much between these three, perhaps a little hint, but not much. Whereas now we're going to distinguish those one, two, three forms. Then we're not doing a final highlight, so you can use the final highlights as a guide to where you're moving. So this first highlight comes to there, now we're going to sort of come a bit higher up. Here we will keep away from there, not go right up to the nose. See there's a little shadow left there, a bit of sort of working up toward here. We're not doing that in that yet, so really all there is going to be this new highlight. Away from the edge a little bit, and so on. So a little bit down here, coming out here, but not as far as this.
So is there any sense of building up a density on the areas which will be highlighted or not, really?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you intensify the areas which will be very highlighted, or not really?
Because each layer is done, I found with 2 layers, each mix is applied with 2 layers, you will tend to put, say if I'm doing this here, you will tend to have a little bit more up there than down there. So you do have a bit more light up there than there. Yeah, so a little bit. Okay. So register in your mind, as it were, where the high point is. The high point is the lighter. So in this one here, the high point is down a bit and in the middle. So in other words, we're going to fade out that way and to the right and to the left. We're not doing the final highlight, but the final highlight, as I think I said to you, you can think of like snow. We're not painting the snow, but the snow is at the highest point. So, so we find the snowy caps, they move down. You're actually sort of painting below the snow line a bit. I'll make another mix here, a little bit less opaque. You might need a slightly smaller brush because you're doing a smaller area. Might put a bit too much white in, we'll see. Don't be lazy with your form, like here, it's not an even crescent, is it? It's fatter there than there. He's turning this way, and given that it's the closer parts that are lighter, the highlighting will run down the left side. If you don't make each highlight area wide enough, there won't be space enough for your next highlight to fit in, will it? So if this first highlight was only halfway down the nose, you'd have a tiny area to put 2 more highlights in. So that's why you must try to control the area you're highlighting, and not making it too small. At this stage, even though we're distinguishing between the 2 areas, to avoid them becoming completely separate, you could, with a more washed out version or very, very dry brush, just have a little bit creeping across, bridging, so it's not too separate. It's this whole thing of no confusion and no division. That is not that, but yet they're not divided. They're not confusing it, but you're not dividing them. So in the early stages, you bridge these. You have little gates between the paddocks, so the sheep can roam. Some of you are doing the icon from, is it Kiev? Yeah. Like a lot of Russian icons, there isn't such a marked difference between the darkest and the lightest. So the Kiev one, the two ways to go about it. One is to do all these 3 or 4 layers of highlighting and then wash it all over to compress them, bring them closer together. Mm-hmm. Or you could just leave off the last area of highlight. So where you might have sort of 3 or 4 layers of highlight, you might have 3 or 4 instead of 5. Mm-hmm. But generally, I suppose because the Byzantines came from a model sculptural tradition, they do tend to have a greater contrast of dark and light in the Russian.
I read about it. It's one of the oldest ones.
Yeah, that's one.
It's like the first one was from the 500th century before, and this one is from the 11th.
And so on. Any questions? Just be careful that you don't have really, like if I brought this highlight right up to the edge there, there'd be a sudden stop of light into the membrane. You don't want that. You want a bit of it might be a short distance where you blend, but it's there.
Is that the amount of white we're aiming for, or are you likely to go over it again?
This you always do it twice, yeah. Given that this is going to fade a bit, it's both ochre and white tend to sort of not fade, go less white as they're drying.
So we do each highlight layer twice, is that right?
Yeah, I think that's generally the rule I found anyway. Any questions about that? It's very important when you're doing the cheekbone that you give it a bit of width. People often bring this up here so it comes to a point, but you notice the width there, that retains that bony part there. So make sure you've got that width there. I think
how many altogether? 4 highlights?
4 mixtures of different, 3 at least, sometimes, 4 probably, including the very fine highlight, yeah. And you may do 4, but find that the colour tone isn't right, so you put a wash over of your Italian warm ochre and then go back in again to re-establish some highlights. So 3 minimum, 4 would be an average.
And this is the second, is it?
This is the second, yeah.
So there's 2 more after this.
Probably, yeah. Or if you're doing that Kievan one, depending how it all pans out, one might just stop at 3. Just depends really. Okay, into it. If you found it's a shadow you put in, it's a bit too dark. By looking at this, that might be a bit too dark, the furrow here.